And we're back on another Tuesday to do a LinkedIn Live. And we have Trisha Lewis in the house today. This is so exciting. So we are talking from two countries apart today. So Trisha is coming to us from the UK. I'm traveling. See, I put a little travel picture like The Alchemist or something. I'm traveling on the open road. So I'm traveling from Las Vegas down to Phoenix, and have laptop will travel. That's always the fun part. So Trisha, we are here to talk about unsquashing your squashed self. I love it. I love it. I love it. So let's start off by actually even just defining what that even means. What does it mean to be squashed and unsquashed?
Well, lovely to be here, Gillian. I've actually got on my, I have this on my desk all the time, look, a squashy brain.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Because that's the thing, isn't it, really? And it's good to have a bit of fun with all of this, because I recognize the whole imposter syndrome malarkey about 4 years ago properly, because that was when I set up my business as a communication coach, and it just hit me in the face. Now, obviously, in hindsight, I then recognized it from my previous life, but I hadn't been able to really figure out what this thing was. But as I researched imposter syndrome quite a lot, and I did talks on it and workshops on it, began to realize, oh my God, I'm so not alone here. Right. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Fast forward, I wanted to use my own kind of words to describe it, and to describe it more in a feeling way. Because I think the word syndrome, not so sure. Imposter all sounds a bit gruesome and potentially a bit depressing. So I wanted to have some fun with it. I suppose that's the actor in me, and hence coming up with this word. Because I probably just said one day, oh, I just feel all squashed, or maybe someone said it to me, but it came out of real language, shall we put it like that? And I will define what self-squashing is, because basically we are doing this to ourselves. We can't really blame anyone else. There is a lot going on in the world, society, baggage, experience, labels, definitions, which of course feed this, but ultimately we're kind of in charge of what's going on here. So self-squashing is suppressing your true self for fear that owning and revealing your full passion, power, personality will have you judged as an unlikable show-off, or even an unprofessional outsider. That's my definition, Gillian. So, yeah, I mean, I can obviously talk about this for 1,000 hours. I thought I'd shut up for a minute and pause. Yeah,
it's amazing. It's amazing, and I love the term squashed. I love unsquashed, because it really is very visual. Just like you said, it's a very visual thing. And I don't like imposter syndrome, because it's like that's never resonated for me in terms of a good label for people. It's what does that even mean? Like fake it, because then we have fake it till you make it, and it's like just gets so confusing. It gets so confusing. So wow. So let's back up and just talk a little bit about your background, because we've talked about that you're a communications coach. So what exactly does that mean too? Because that kind of gives you the credibility to even be talking about this in the first place.
Okay, good question. Am I good at actually giving you a snappy answer to that? No. Do I help other people give snappy answers? Yes. I basically, if you put together all of the vast life experience and skills that I've accumulated, because I'm very old, if you put all that together, there was a common theme, and it was to do with communication. And it started with the realization that I seemed to sort of communicate to myself and others better when I was reciting poetry or on a stage, and on we go. From quite kind of weirdly confused identity thing that I had going on when I was growing up, squashed, I now realize, and then sort of it developed after a strange patch where I didn't do any acting or any of the stuff that I should have been doing, and just did all the muddle stuff of relationships and had kids, okay, all of that. And then I got into doing a few sort of portfolio career things, Gillian, because as an actor, because I went back then and I took up acting professionally, but of course you have to have a few strings to your bow when you're doing that kind of work. So I first of all found a way of making the acting work for me, which was by doing one-woman shows, which also fantastic.
Wow.
So, yes, wow. Exactly. That was a real unsquashing thing to do, but I still found myself squashed. I'll explain that in a minute, maybe. But there I am, going on doing one-woman shows, one-woman plays, cabaret, after-dinner speaking, you name it. Nobody in the world would have said, she's a bit squashed, Trisha. Yeah, well, you know, when she came up dressed in that extraordinary thing, and then she took half of the thing off in the middle of it and then sung that. So, yeah, definitely very squashed. Nobody would have said that. But actually, there was something weird going on in my head, but I'll try and unpick that maybe in a minute. But I then went on to do a mature student thing. So at the age of 48, I went to uni, did communication as a BA honours degree. So there you get the creative stuff as well as the psychology of communication. Right. So that's your sort of geeky underlay. And I was fascinated by it all, and people and how they behave. I then also did things with people with dementia. I was delivering reminiscence sessions and shows, all sorts. So again, communication on the raw edge of it, where you had to learn how to just throw yourself into a situation where not necessarily fluid language was coming out of people, but there was feeling, there was trust vibes, there was going with the flow. It was really quite extraordinary, the stuff I learned in that experience. For 10 years, I was freelance doing that. And then I also trained as a funeral celebrant. So I began yeah, so that meant, what did that mean? Communication and story, you know, so you were going into grieving families, they had to trust you instantly. You wanted to help them remember those stories and memories, but not feel pressurized, not worry about being vulnerable with me. It was a whole host of things going into completely different settings. The same with the theatre. Over and over again, totally different venues. It was all live. So I thought, hang on, I have got some skills here, haven't I?
Huge range.
This isn't just me messing around, is it? This is some stuff. And so, yeah, then I thought, I'm going to challenge myself. This was the unsquashing bit, because I knew that I was still squashed in a funny way, that I didn't own a lot of what I did, that I was holding a part of me back out of this weird fear. Oh, people will think I'm a show off or whatever it is. I need to be liked, you know, all of that. I nearly said a rude word. And then I also had this demon to slay of doing something as a business, because to me, in the arts world, everything's nice and fluffy and cuddly and lovely, and we're all lovely people. We might be a bit crazy, but we're all lovely. In the business world, we're all after making money, and we're all a bit evil and cold. And so I thought, no, let's try and slay that. So that originally was me. I was just going to become a speaker, but in the business world. And then I thought, that's naive. You've got to actually do the groundwork first, Trisha. So set up doing the helping small business owners. And it can range from the really obvious stuff like public speaking stuff, or video confidence, but it actually ranges now through people just wanting to explore who they are and what kind of language should they be using out there, not the stuff that they think everyone should because it's professional, doing their kind of story finding with them to a certain extent. So it can be quite organic.
I agree. And it's amazing because like doing video coaching with people too, when you talk about you have to be authentic on camera, a lot of times people step back and say, I don't even know what that means, because that means I'd have to look inward and find out, who am I to even be authentic? And a lot of people have been like, well, I'm this for my mom and my dad, and then for my spouse, and then I'm trying to be this super person. And it's really hard, because to be authentic means you have to really know who you are in the first place and then build up the confidence. It's huge.
Absolutely. And we are more than ever. I mean, that's not going on. I was born in the 50s, and I've got some old, because when I did reminiscence work, Gillian, I collected a lot of stuff that triggered memories. So from photos to objects to music, obviously, but also magazines. So I had some old 50s and 60s women magazines. And you realize this isn't anything new, this pressure that we're all, got to be perfect. In fact, it was rife in the 50s and 60s. And I grew up in a house where my mother was literally out of one of those magazines doing all the right things in her lovely, pretty pinny. And, my father was businessman, off he goes to work.
I'm thinking Mary Poppins. I'm thinking Mary Poppins, like you had the father with Mr. Banks.
Yeah, I think they had slightly more fun in that household. I might have quite happily walked into that. I love Mary Poppins. Oh my gosh. So now it was all a little bit constrained. People didn't really speak their mind. People were all a bit. So that's always been there. But of course, social media has it's like in your face. You must do this. You must do that. Do it like this. That's how professional people. Oh, look, we're seeing the shiny stuff. We never see the rubbish stuff. So I wanted to make sure when people had anything to do with me that it was important that they knew what to expect, and that we weren't going to be doing shiny stuff or even template stuff or even necessarily pure coaching either, because I'm not a qualified coach. My qualifications come from everything I've just told you, and and that's a lot. So I didn't feel, well, of course I did at first feel that I was cheating, because that was the old little inner naggy saying, oh God, you need certificates, you need qualifications, you need everything else. But I got through that, and I want other people to see that there isn't a list of got tos and should dos. You can work through things and you learn things and you evolve. And, the main thing is that you have this thing released, which is you. And you're quite right, Gillian, when you say that isn't, just be you, because I didn't really know what that me was. There was me actor. Was that me? Is that me? I don't know. There was me introvert. There was me, whatever.
Exactly.
It's a weird feeling when you get there. It's like you've been tuning in and out of these various dials, and then one day, after really working on it for a while and coming out, if you like, bit by bit, and knowing nothing bad's happened and that you feel better, and then you do it a bit more, and then one day you just sort of think, here I am. Yeah, here I am. That's nice.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it's funny, I never knew the whole sort of funeral angle that you were involved with funerals and all that. That's fascinating. And it's interesting because it reminds me of, I think it was Alfred Nobel, who was like the Nobel Prize guy. And somebody wrote his eulogy, or obituary. And they got it wrong. It was like not him. It was his brother. I can't quite remember the story, but he didn't like, I guess his brother died, but they wrote the obituary for him. And he didn't like the obituary, which meant he didn't like his life. He didn't like what he was being known for creating, I think, dynamite or explosives or something along that lines, and went, is that my legacy? And he changed his life based on that obituary, and then went on to do great stuff, which became the Nobel Prize. And that's the origins of the Nobel Prize. But it was that pivotal moment of having, and I'll find you the story later because it's a great story, but it was that pivotal moment of realizing, if that is my obituary, if that would be my eulogy, is that really me? And I know I've sat in funerals and listened to obituaries and just went, that person didn't have much of a life, like what they're saying about them. And I thought, oh my gosh, to have lived your life and never really have lived, that to me is a travesty. So in essence, you know, when I think of you as like the actor hat and improv, because I'm sure you did a lot of improv, and you think of the funerals and eulogies, that's almost something that like we should all do, is take this moment and write your eulogy. And would you like that? If not, rewrite the story, because it's just a chapter, right? We're still just in a chapter.
I absolutely love that, Gillian. And yes, I still do funerals. So I'm still in that really privileged position of being, as I say, going into a stranger's house at the moment that they're, you know, a week away from losing their loved one or whatever, you know, and there's something about, and then I do usually write those words. And it was a bit like the same thing with the people with dementia. And it's the same that I do with clients. There is a common thing that you just sort of have to be. And it's the same with acting. Present. You have to be present. And you can. And I realized how much time I'd spent in social occasions as I was growing up, right all the way into my 30s, 40s, 50s, worrying about what people were thinking about me, what I was going to say, what did I look like, was I going to sound stupid, was I going to fit in, oh my gosh, that script was almost constant. And I can tell I'm unsquashed because I barely look in the mirror at all, which is so nice. I mean, this is probably also an age thing, to be fair. I'll give you that, but you know, it's still, I think, part of the deal is because I'm not in here wondering about what people are thinking when they look at me thing. I'm just there, and so when I walk into somebody's house, when I, you know, walked into those care homes, you know, people can tell they're very raw at that point. Either way you look at that. And the same with the client, you know, when they're just meeting you in that first session, or they're quite vulnerable, they're quite raw, and they
great word
could easily
vulnerable.
they could put their barriers up instantly if they felt somehow they weren't safe to take them down. So it's my responsibility to allow them to take those barriers down really quickly, because we haven't got all day. You know, I'm sat there for an hour with them, but equally they're grieving, so I can't go, you know, bouncing in there saying, oh, come on, tell us some lovely stories. So every individual, every place, and it was the same when I did the after dinner speaking or the entertainment, every group of people in the audience, every venue, you walked into that space and you had to be present in that space, forget any baggage or preconceptions or judgments about people or anything, and just be there. And that's what makes all the difference. And then people instantly pick up this vibe that you're just there with them. And you don't have to do anything clever at that point or look a particular way, really. You know, that people don't notice those things when you're present. No. It's really weird, isn't it?
Yeah. It's about safety.
Deeper, yeah.
It's about safety. They just feel safe. So segue. So we must talk about this. So this is the fabulous, oh my goodness, I hate being backwards. Okay, so this is the fabulous book that's out, and I'd love you. So obviously you feel so passionate about this that a book came leaping out of your brain and into your pen. And so tell us the origin for writing the book. Where is something that just kind of came during the pandemic, or is this something you've always wanted to do?
it was a couple of years back. I thought I want to write a book, and it was going to be sort of imposter syndrome-y stuff. But I had like pretty much the whole book kind of written, not edited or anything like that. And I didn't work with anybody. And it didn't rest with me in a way I knew. Something wasn't happening. So it took another couple of years. And of course, during that time, I'm now evolving myself, coming across all these little barriers, having to figure out what the heck was going on. Every single client that I got to work with, I was listening to all of their conversations, doing workshops, hearing what people, Q&As. And it just became so clear to me then that I needed to sort of do this my way. And so what happened was, it really partly started with this birth of Investigator Lewis. So I was on LinkedIn and all those places doing the right kind of thing with my posts, but fairly ordinary. And then one day, due to this little encouraging moment I had with a couple of people who said, go for it, I appeared with the Mac or the glasses, I can't remember which came first, and gave a communication tip to camera very spontaneously, in character as a private detective from like the 50s, whatever. And it went down like a house on fire. And I thought, I've done it. I've cracked it. I can be the actor me as well as the communication coach me. They aren't in two separate boxes, which is what I had thought they were. So I'd been like fighting internally, thinking, oh God, I'm betraying my soul here. Where's my actor? It's all gone. It's all been squashed. I've got to be professional. I don't like being professional. I want to go to blah, 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 blah. Anyway, developed, got the trilby, which was again part of my costumes from years ago, put that on, the character developed. And then the book somehow morphed from that, because when I talked to a book coach, Helen Pollock, her name is, we talked about doing the stuff about, the feelings of, whatever. And then I don't even know that the squash thing came first, actually, talking about but I said to her, I'd quite like to use this investigator model because it's great, because it's like you're asking questions and forensics I keep going on about. And she said, yeah, go for it, definitely. And I said, well, shall I just put a little bit at the end of each chapter? She said, no, go for it. Do the whole thing, like in your voice, like the investigator. I said, really? You think it's a business book? Is that okay? Yes, she said. I really give her a lot of credit for this, because it can be the subtlest of things that make working with somebody very worthwhile. And it was those encouraging words right at the beginning. Yes, Trisha, she kept saying. And I sent her a couple of chapters. Is that okay? Yes, I love it, she said.
That's awesome.
And the voice was there. It was the voice, because it was the voice that I used for Investigator Lewis. And then I thought, I need to get the sciencey stuff in. I want to get some of the geeky psychological drivers of behaviors in, because I've got 1,000 books, done a lot of research. I love this stuff. So I invented another character, Professor P, who is a friend of the investigator. They have an interesting relationship. And the investigator takes the notes that she's taken listening to this frustrated business owner pour her heart out, and there are 8 of them in total. And she takes the notes to the professor. The professor then studies them for a while and then comes out with some very interesting bits of research and quotes and books and psychological drivers, but in character. And then back she goes, the investigator, to write up her report and recommendations, which of course, is part of the actions that you can take. And each one then ends with a crack your own case, which is an absolute exercise to carry out yourself on whatever that topic of that particular frustration, that squashing frustration has been. And it flowed, and it had structure and it had my voice. And it's a metaphor for basically what happens when you unsquash yourself, that your words flow, that your words, not somebody else's, your facial expressions, the way you show up, just everything sort of aligns. And that's why writing the book like I did was such a good thing, because if I had written it like a sort of standard business book, sticking to some of the rules, I would have betrayed the very message that I'm giving to everybody. So
you would have been squashing yourself. Correct? You would have been squashing yourself. Yeah, so it was like you kind of you let your inner geeks come out and play and help you write the book. It's almost like a little bit of a holy trinity.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and there's even a cat in there as well.
I love the cat. I love the cat. I love the cat. And that's really good, because it's like it's an easy, I'm halfway through. It's a great book. I highly recommend. And it's an easy book to read, because you can kind of, it's like Netflix episodes. You can go through a particular case, and it's like, if you want, you can binge and go on to the next one, or you can pick up the next night and you can kind of read it in chunks. But I think because it's case driven with these sort of, you see yourself in some of this and some of that, and it's like, oh. And I think probably the most important thing, and this is where I think your book is especially helpful, is that so many of us think it's just me. It's just me that deals with this, because we're both on LinkedIn. We're both all in on LinkedIn, and you go through LinkedIn and you just, some days you just go, I don't even know if I want to post, because I can't compete with all the fabulous things. And it's like, this guy's got a 90-page slider, and this guy's got like some video with special effects and moonwalking. And you're just like, I can't compete with that. But I think the thing is that we all feel like this. We all feel like, everybody has the rule book, and we just kind of got let in somehow, and we're in the wrong room or something. And I think your book is a realization that a lot of us could be just carrying on, crap from our childhoods. Oftentimes the Detective Lewis and Professor P and the cat are basically saying, you got some stuff you got to deal with from your childhood, which we all, we don't know where those things come in. But I think the important thing is, just because something happened to you in your life doesn't mean it has to continue. So I kind of go back to like Alfred Nobel. You can make that change and rewrite the story. It's just a chapter. Move on. Go somewhere else. And I like that you not only analyze each character, but you actually give, and here's what else you can do. Here's some homework to like take it one step further. So I think that's really valuable to do that.
Yeah. I think action is very important, because we can talk ourselves into spirals of uselessness. Even talking is good, expressing is good, talking with other people is great, realizing you're not alone, all of that is great. Researching, getting some of the psychological knowledge, so you realize that these brains are whoa. All of that is great, but ultimately it is the step by step. I'm gonna try this. Oh, that worked. And then you remember it. It's like a motor memory almost. So when you come across those little triggers, I talk about squasher triggers, you recognize them quicker, because they'll happen. They will happen. Oh boy, will they happen. But you recognize them quicker, and you give yourself a talking to, and you've got a little bit of knowledge to not bash yourself up so much.
Right. So I'm just wondering, have you ever considered running sort of like improvs, but business improvs, like communication workshop improvs?
Yes, I did. I had about 6 months or so of doing an improv group, back in the days where people met in a space, and it was absolutely glorious, and I love it. But it all came down to organization, finances, and marketing, Gillian, which is not something, most people, what it's like. And some people wanted it to be like a drama class, and some people wanted it to be something else, and so I was ending up with a core of about 4 or 5 people who came every time, but it didn't make any sense. I was having to hire a venue, and it all just kind of got a bit complex. And so I ditched it. but of course I want to do something like that. I just have to find a way of doing it that makes sense somehow. Because improv is just the business. And this is the thing. You don't have to be an actor, everybody. If you see my videos, you think, oh, it's all very well for her. She's an actor, isn't she? No, the point is that yes, I am. Just like you, he's a carpenter, he's a plumber, she's an IT expert. It's just the thing that I got good at by learning it and doing it lots. That's all. And loving it. But, these things. So when I do those things, that is just me doing the thing I'm good at. So I need to get that across, because I know people sort of think, well, it's all very well. No, you don't need to do it like this. I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm not spending loads on production. I'm not, so you'll find your message and your way and your voice and all the rest of it. But doing something like improv is something that takes us all slightly out of our comfort zones, and that's the point. We all have to do that. When I stepped into the first business networking event, I couldn't have been way more out of my comfort zone. My whole stomach was churning, and people won't believe that. They think, but you're an actor, you're all confident. I promise you, I was like an alien at that point, and I really had to do a lot of work to keep going, because I felt like running away from it a number of times over the last couple of years or so. And the only time I've really kept with it is since being unsquashed.
It's awesome. And I think that so much of it is mindset. And I think, you're kind of like a living testimonial to the improv mindset of, so many of us go, yes, but you look like you say yes, and, which is kind of that whole mindset of improv, of taking something and then just going with it, just leaning in instead of pulling back, and
not worrying about looking. And you end up not worrying about looking stupid, which, let's face it, we all have that thing. That's a fear of rejection. It's so flipping survival brain normal, but
it's the reptilian brain. That reptilian brain talking to us. Love it. Okay, well, I think we could talk forever on this. This is such great stuff. So everyone, check out this book. It is an awesome book. Hold it up again, Trisha. Love it. It's available on Amazon. Yeah. So I got it. Amazon.
It's Amazon at the moment. Yeah, it will be. It's a thing with Amazon. After about 3 months, it'll be all over the place in lovely little quirky bookshops and what have. I hope so, really. So, but at the moment, Amazon. Yeah.
Is there any kind of through you get on autographed copies or anything?
Yeah, if you, I have got that possibility. Yes. So if you just direct message me on LinkedIn, to be honest, that's your best bet. I'm a LinkedIn mainly person. So although I am spread out a little bit all over the place, Instagram. But yeah, just direct message me on LinkedIn.
Got it.
Say, I'd love a signed copy, and I'll send you the link.
Super. All right. Well, thank you so much, Trisha, for coming out, and let's all be more pineapple, less squashed. We'll be more pineapple and less squashed. I love that. Let's just that mindset. And thank you so much for being here today. It was great. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Loved it, Gillian.